Welcome back. The town of Clitheroe in northern England has come to symbolise the tensions and arguments in Britain about multiculturalism and the place of Islam. The irony is that Muslims aren't the first religious community to be viewed with suspicion in Clitheroe.
The chapel closed in 1940. For 60 years, it's been a factory. The last shipment from here was a consignment of headscarves for Saudi Arabia. But now, Mount Zion seems destined to recapture some of its former grandeur.
We've got this beautiful building in the centre of town, which obviously, you know, is a real asset to us and to the community. And I think the people of Clitheroe now, with hindsight, all those who were opposed to the planning application at 26 Holden Street would rather that the Muslim community did have 26 Holden Street, because instead of, you know, being stuck out here on a side street and terraced house, we've got this beautiful building smack in the town centre, which you can't help but to notice, and the Muslims obviously will be seen coming in and out of this building, and I'm sure there will be certain members of the community out there who will be spitting feathers every time they see a Muslim member of the community entering and leaving this building.
This is by nature a Christian country and has been for 2,000 years. There's a lot of history, and when you look up and down the country, you think that our own history and our own identity is being eroded.
On the issue of identity, passions run high on both sides of the argument, regardless of whether a community is struggling to retain its identity or fighting to establish it, and neither side appears to respect those for whom identity means nothing.
The whole idea of a mosque being in a community is that it gives the Muslim community that identity. And we are striving and working towards an identity, whereas certain quarters within the town quite happy just to let the whole identity issue drift by, and okay, we live in this town, it's a market town, big deal, but we're not bothered particularly about the castle, but we are bothered about these Muslims having an identity. It's a case of, you know, if we can't have it, they can't have it. If we don't want it, then we're not going to allow them to have it. You know, and we as a small Muslim community want that identity, and we firmly believe that having this Muslim place of worship will give us greater identity. And the fact that it is a chapel, you know, almost adds more to the actual sort of beauty of the whole thing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We've got the Clitheroe flag flying on top of the castle. 25 years ago, we weren't being bothered too much by Al-Qaeda. We were being bothered and terrorised and bombed by the IRA. And 25 years ago this summer, they did a dastardly thing and blew up the household cavalry members, but also the horses. Do you remember it?
This memory from 25 years ago will be lost on the younger members of this audience. They believe they face a new threat, and for the very young, that threat will, in turn, be replaced with another. The community's identity changes over time. Clitheroe may have struggled to include various minorities throughout its history, but does that make it a racist town?
I grew up in Clitheroe and I brought my own family up, and I don't think anybody's racist. Clitheroe is not a racist town. People are very nice. We get on, we work with them, we live with them. I've loved living in Clitheroe. You know, it's a few letters in the local paper, opposition to the mosque now and again. But that kind of thing, it just kind of disappoints you, because, you know, I myself have been here all my life, and you expect people to kind of back you up rather than the other, because it's something they should realise we need, and it's a necessity to us. That kind of thing, it disappoints me. We all were disappointed. We didn't expect there'd be that much fuss. I mean, we've got to teach the kids, and we have to have a religious education for our kids as being as Muslims. But that's a change. It's something that has to happen. So that's why we're disappointed.
Mohammed Safraz, the taxi driver, sends his children to study at the Medina Centre on Holden Street. It's woefully inadequate to the needs of the community today, and Safraz, like many Muslims, can't understand what all the fuss is about. There's a fundamental need that isn't being met.
There seems to me to be a great deal of ill-informed prejudice against the Muslim faith. I feel that it's part of the broader question as to whether the people of Clitheroe can be happy with a Muslim community in its midst.
A lot of people have expressed concern that having a mosque in Clitheroe will lead to the Muslim community taking over Clitheroe. I mean, there have been some really wild ideas, and it's a tactic which is used to try and create opposition to the mosque project. But I think a lot of people see through that. I don't hide the fact that there are many mosques who perhaps don't do a very good job of opening their doors and getting people involved. I think it's something which is happening more and more by necessity because the spotlight is on Islam. But I think it shouldn't be a reactionary thing. It's something which mosques are supposed to do.
And the Muslim community is trying to build bridges. Farouk is the captain of Clitheroe's second 11. It's a diverse and integrated group, but it doesn't seem to be typical of the rest of the town. The recent media interest in Clitheroe seems to have had an adverse effect on the community. People are increasingly unwilling to speak openly on the issues surrounding the mosque. This growing silence is being exploited by certain elements in the town who are attempting to turn the whole affair into a grand conspiracy.
Our party leader was nearly jailed for speaking out against Islam, and people are quite reticent about speaking about, openly speak. They'll talk in the front room. They'll talk while the TV's on, while Coronation Street's on, and they'll say, well, this is wrong, but get in the public street, you won't talk in the street in case somebody overhears you and say you're a racist.
All the best.
This charge of racism has effectively silenced Clitheroe's moderate majority. Increasingly, extremist groups are masquerading as the guardians of democracy and free speech. But there are also personal scores being settled. This is a small town and everyone knows everyone else.
Erzarshad, from all accounts, is quite, he's a pleasant young man, which I think he is. Farouk on the other side, I've been growled at by him. So obviously Farouk has decided that I'm a racist and I'm a bigot, which I'm not. And he despises me and hates me. People tend to think about nationalism as being just racist bigots, and they don't see the whole spectrum of nationalism and about what it encompasses.
I firmly believe that if another faith group opened a place of worship here, the same fears, the same accusations, the same sort of suspicions would not be directed at that particular faith group, purely and simply because of the way of the world at the moment and the anti-Muslim feeling that there is out there, that, the Muslims are a very, very easy and soft target. And it's the fact that in this current climate where we have this whole Islamophobia and this sort of anti-Muslim sentiment out there, that we've got a small Muslim community, the easier thing for us would have been to shut up shop and head to Blackburn. Easy. 30 mosques there, not a problem. Okay? And our life would have been easier. But no, we felt that as citizens of this town, as true Clitheroeans, born, bred and raised in this town, we had a right, as much as any other faith, to practice in this town.
I don't believe, my own personal opinion is, that Muslims aren't compatible with the West, so to speak. They segregate themselves. They don't integrate at all. The only time they integrate is if they can get a benefit out of it.
This building was made famous through a Lowry painting, and I think Lowry's painting was sort of capturing that essence of what it is to be in a market town in Lancashire in the UK. Perhaps the global sort of media have picked up on the fact that, this sort of relationship between Islam and the West, this is the sort of final battleground, and they've really tried to spin it in lots of different ways, and it would be funny if it wasn't so serious in the consequences of that, because I think a lot of people have sort of taken the bait.
I wouldn't say a mosque in the town is the end of Englishness, but it could certainly be classed as the beginning of the end.
Fred Braithwaite lived through a clash of civilisations. He's seen the tragedy behind the rhetoric. When India became self-governing in 1947, it had to cede part of its territory to create the Muslim state of Pakistan. Hindus and Muslims were forcibly transported, and wholesale slaughter was the outcome.
I can remember going through agonies myself, witnessing the terrible things that were going on in India, all in the name of religion.
But Clitheroe's mosque may offer hope for the town's future.
I mean, they talk about parallel lives, people not wishing to engage with one another, Muslims doing their own thing, Christians doing their own thing, Asians doing their own things, whites doing their own things. And in Clitheroe you have the sort of birth of something quite unique.
That is, if the mosque is ever built.
And they're in the process of moving in and trying to get it all started and that. So obviously, we've just got to hope and pray that something goes wrong, so to speak.
British history is full of minorities being initially feared and shunned who eventually become part of the fabric of national life. Britain's Muslims are only the latest group to have to go through that experience. That's it for this edition, but see you next time on Witness.